Welcome everyone. Before we dive in, be sure to check our previous videos, as well as drop your thoughts, feelings, and lessons in the comments. Like the video and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's get into it. The night Renee finally said, "I can't do this anymore," she chose the loudest moment to say it. Her cousins were in the living room. The TV was on, and she stood in the kitchen doorway with her arms crossed, voice shaking just enough to sound wounded. "Jordan, you're too controlling. I feel like I'm suffocating." Their eyes turned toward me from the couch. In seconds, I went from the quiet boyfriend who cooked dinner to the man everyone apparently needed to be wary of. Renee knew how to stage a scene. Her voice broke at all the right places. Her hand brushed away a perfectly timed tear, and she didn't even look at me as she said, "I've tried to make this work, but you never listen." My throat tightened. I had listened. I had bent, folded, and reshaped myself, all for a woman who'd already decided months ago she was done. Tonight was not about honesty. Tonight was about making sure everyone believed I was the reason the relationship died. As she spoke, my mind drifted back to the day we met, when I thought she was the best thing that had ever happened to me. It was 3 years earlier at a 4th of July barbecue on the south side of Chicago. I remembered standing near the grill, pretending to be interested in overcooked burgers while feeling oddly alone in that crowded yard. Then I heard her laugh, bright, musical, and full life, and everything inside me turned toward that sound. Renee walked in wearing a yellow sundress that made her skin glow like summer itself. She had this easy confidence, greeting everyone by name, making jokes with the old heads, and playing tag with the kids. When our mutual friend introduced us, she smiled like she'd been expecting me. "So you're Jordan," she said, as if she'd already decided I was interesting. I stumbled over my words, but she laughed and leaned in, giving me her full attention. It felt like sunlight focusing on one spot. We spent most of that day talking. She asked about my job as an IT specialist, my family back in Indiana, my dreams of one day owning a small tech firm. She listened so intensely that I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. When fireworks started crackling above us, she slipped her arm through mine and rested her head on my shoulder as if it was the most natural thing in the world. By the end of the night, I was already imagining a future with her. The early months were blissful. We went on long walks along Lake Michigan, shared late-night takeout in my tiny apartment, and stayed up talking about everything: faith, fears, childhood stories. Renee had a way of making the whole world shrink down to just the two of us. When she laughed at my corny jokes and called me her safe place, I believed her. I introduced her to my parents over FaceTime, and my mother whispered afterward, "She looks at you like you're her whole world." I thought so, too. The first cracks were subtle, easy to dismiss. She started teasing me about my clothes, then about how much time I spent at work. "You're always busy," she said one evening, tossing her bra onto my chair. "Maybe if you weren't glued to that laptop, we'd have more fun." She laughed. So I did too, brushing off as playful. But over time, the jokes sharpened. "You're so boring sometimes, Jordan. Where's the excitement?" I started feeling like I was auditioning for a role I hadn't known I'd signed up for. When Renee lost her job at the salon, I told her she could stay with me until she got back on her feet. She moved into my apartment with 2 suitcases and 1,000 expectations. At first, it felt like a natural step forward. We cooked together, watched movies, and planned our future. But soon, I was paying all the bills while she spent her days scrolling social media and her nights complaining that she felt trapped. Somehow, the more I gave, the more she acted like I was taking something from her. Arguments started over small things. She accused me of checking up on her when I asked how her job search was going. If I mentioned bills, she'd say I was making her feel like a burden. Whenever we fought, she would storm out and call her friends, telling them just enough to paint herself as a victim. I would overhear pieces of those conversations. "I don't know, girl, he's just intense sometimes." Afterward, she'd return home quiet, distant, and I'd apologize even when I wasn't sure what I'd done wrong. The first time I realized how differently she told our story was at a small get-together with her friends. We were sitting around a coffee table, sipping wine, when one of them said, "Jordan, You gotta chill with that jealous stuff. I laughed, confused, until Renee chimed in, eyes wide and innocent. It's not that bad, she said, touching my arm. He just worries too much. She told him about a night when I'd asked who she was texting at 2 a.m., leaving out that she'd been hiding her phone for weeks. After that, I started noticing the patterns. When she canceled our plans last minute, she'd tell people I'd gotten moody. When she spent money from our shared account without asking, she'd tell her family I micromanaged finances. Slowly, in the conversations I wasn't invited to, she was building a version of me that didn't exist, controlling, insecure, overbearing. I felt like I was watching someone forge my name on a story, one sentence at a time, and I didn't know how to stop it without playing into her hands. The turning point came when she asked for a girls' trip to Miami. She sold it like a chance to recharge, to come back as a better girlfriend. I had a bad feeling, but I paid for flights and hotel anyway. Wanted to show I trusted her. While she was gone, she barely answered my calls, sending brief texts like, "Can't talk. Out." When she finally FaceTimed me, music was blaring in the background, and some guy walked past behind her, shirtless. She laughed it off, called him just some random. 2 weeks after she came back, I discovered messages on her tablet. She'd forgotten to log out. I wasn't snooping. I opened it to check the weather, and the screen lit up with notifications. Curious, I tapped. What I saw made my stomach twist. Flirty messages, hotel room selfies, and a voice note where she giggled and said, "Jordan thinks I'm asleep in a room downstairs." My hand shook. I sat on the couch for a long time, the light from the screen painting a harsh truth I could no longer ignore. When I confronted her, she turned it into a performance. First came the denial, then indignation. "Why were you on my tablet?" she demanded, as if I committed the gravest sin. "You're violating my privacy." When I read the messages aloud, her eyes filled with tears, and she collapsed onto the floor. "You never trust me," she sobbed. "You always think the worst of me. Maybe I flirted, but you're the reason I needed attention. You made me feel lonely." Somehow, in the middle of my heartbreak, I found myself apologizing. After that, something in me broke. I stayed, telling myself it was because I believed people deserve second chances. But really I stayed because I was afraid of being alone again. Renee sensed that fear and sharpened it into a weapon. She became colder, more dismissive. She'd roll her eyes when I spoke, scroll through her phone while I tried to talk about my day, and tell her friends, loud enough for me to hear, that she was trying, but I was too much. I felt smaller every week, like I was disappearing. One night, I came home early from work and heard her talking on speakerphone in the bedroom. I paused in the hallway, recognizing the voice of her closest friend, Tasha. "I'm done, Tash," Renee said, sounding tired but strangely energized. "I just need to end it in a way that doesn't make me look like the bad guy. You know how he gets emotional, dramatic. If I just tell people I feel unsafe around his moods, they'll understand. Nobody wants to be around a man who can't control himself." The words hit me like a physical blow. Unsafe, dramatic, emotional. She wasn't just trying to leave. She was planning a story where I would be the villain, the unstable ex everyone warned their cousins about. "Girl, just say he's controlling," Tasha replied. "People believe that. Tell them he tracked your phone or something." They laughed together. I backed away from the bedroom door, my heart pounding in my ears. For the first time, I saw clearly. Renee wasn't just careless with my feelings. She was strategic. That night, I did not cry in front of her. I locked myself in the bathroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were red, my shoulders slumped. I looked like a man who had been apologizing for existing. "This is not who you are," I whispered to myself. I remembered my father's voice from years ago. "Son, don't ever let anyone write your story while you stand there holding the pen." For months, I had been letting Renee do exactly that. Something in me began to harden, not cruel, but resolute. I decided I would not fight her with lies. I would fight her with the truth. Quietly, without telling her, I started gathering everything I would need if she tried to destroy my name. I downloaded our text conversations and saved screenshots of her messages from the tablet. I printed bank statements showing how I'd supported her. I saved screenshot of her post where she bragged about the Miami trip she had called healing time. I wasn't planning revenge. I was building a shield for the storm she was preparing. At the same time, I changed how I treated her, not with shouting or cruelty, but with the same coldness she'd given me. I stopped begging for her attention. I stopped rearranging my schedule to fit her last-minute plans. If she stayed out late, I stopped pacing the floor and instead went to bed. When she made snide comments, I let them pass without defending myself. I wasn't doing it to play games. I was simply done auditioning. The distance unsettled her more than any argument could have. Renee noticed. "You've changed," she said one evening, watching me calmly wash dishes while her show played in the background. "You don't ask where I'm going anymore." I shrugged. "You're grown. You don't need me to monitor your movements." She frowned, as if I'd taken something from her. Her attempt to provoke me became more obvious, flirting loudly on the phone, posting suggestive selfies, forgetting to come home one night. I kept my tone level, my responses measured. Inside, my heart still hurt, but I refused to feed the story she wanted to tell. Eventually, she made her move. She told me she wanted to host a small family dinner at our place. Her cousins, a few of our mutual friends, maybe my sister, she could drive up. "I just want everyone together," she said, eyes sugary sweet. I saw through it immediately. I remembered the conversation with Tasha. This wasn't a family dinner. It was a stage. Still, I agreed. "Sure," I said. "Let's invite everyone." That night, I emailed myself a final copy of the evidence I collected, just in case. The evening of the dinner. The apartment looked beautiful. Candles flickered on the dining table. Soft jazz played from the speakers, and the smell of baked chicken filled the air. Our guests arrived laughing, hugging, clinking glasses. Renee floated around the room, touching shoulders, delivering practiced smiles. I moved quietly, refilling drinks, making sure everyone was comfortable. Beneath my calm, my nerves hummed. I felt like an actor who already knew the ending of the play, but had to pretend he didn't. After dessert, Renee cleared her throat. "So," she began, placing a hand on her chest, "there's something I need to share." Conversations fell silent. She looked down, then back up with watery eyes. "Jordan and I, things haven't been good. I've been feeling unsafe emotionally for a while. He gets really intense, really controlling. I didn't want to say anything because I know he's going through stuff. But I can't do this anymore." Gasps, sympathetic murmurs, eyes swinging toward me. She had rehearsed this moment. I let the silence stretch, let her words hang in the air like smoke. Then I took a slow breath and stood. "May I say something?" I asked. All eyes turned to me. Renee shifted nervously. I pulled my phone from my pocket, opened a folder labeled receipts, and placed it on the table. "I respect Renee's feelings," I began, "but I also respect the truth." My voice did not shake. "Before anyone decides who caused what, I want to share a few things I've been holding on to." I started with a Miami trip. Screenshots of her messages, photos she'd sent another man while telling me she was sleeping. I read excerpts aloud, my voice flat. Then I played the recording I had made of the conversation with Tasha, where she described wanting to frame me as unstable and controlling. The room went very still. Her cousin's jaw dropped. One of our friends looked away, ashamed. Renee's face drained of color. "You recorded me?" she whispered, horrified. "You were planning a story about me." I replied softly. I was protecting myself. My cruelty, if anyone want to call it that, came next. Calmly, I explained that I'd already removed her from our joint account a week earlier, that I'd paid the rent through the end of the month, but would not be renewing the lease with her on it, that I'd left a folder in the bedroom with information about job openings, and a list of her belongings I'd already boxed up. I did not raise my voice. I did not insult her. I simply laid out the consequences of months of manipulation. Her cousins looked from her to me, confusion and disappointment etched across their faces. "Renee, is this true?" one of them asked, tapping the screen of my phone. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Not the crafted ones from earlier, but raw, panicked ones. "You're making me look crazy," she whispered. I shook my head. "I'm not making you look like anything," I said quietly. "I'm just letting everyone see what you already did." For the first time, the narrative wasn't hers alone. After everyone left, the apartment rang with a hard, echoing silence. Renee paced the living room, mascara streaked down her cheeks. "You humiliated me," she cried. "You made me look like the bad guy." I stood near the doorway, tired beyond words. "I didn't have to make you look like anything," I said. "You were willing to ruin my name to feel better about leaving. The only thing I did was refuse to let you." I picked up my overnight bag, the one I'd packed earlier, and walked toward the door. "So that's it?" she asked, voice breaking. "You're just done with me?" I paused, hand on the knob. "I was done the night I heard you planning my character's funeral." I said, "Tonight was just a burial." I stepped into the hallway, closing the door gently behind me. Months later, when the ache had dulled and I had begun rebuilding my life in a smaller, quieter apartment, I realized something important. She hadn't broken me. She'd revealed me to myself. And this time, the story people heard about me was finally true. If you enjoyed this story, please comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.